Country for the Blind is a short story by H.G. Wells about an explorer who discovers a mysterious village where everyone in its village is blind. For generations, no one has ever been able to see, and the explorer thinks, aha, I will be king. The problem is, everyone in this village thinks he is crazy. He tries to explain to them that he has these things called eyes, but they think he has a mental illness. He falls in love with a girl, but she thinks he's crazy too. Finally, the village doctor advises him to have an operation to remove his eyes and to remove his sight. Out of love for the girl, the explorer actually says yes to the operation, but he changes his mind at the very last moment and runs away. In the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, so the saying goes. Well, not so according to the story, and not so according to John chapter 9. The situation is kind of reversed. In John chapter 9, everyone can see except for this man born blind. And that phrase is repeated again and again, man born blind, verses 1, 2, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24, 25, 31. 10 times he's called the blind man. Even after he is healed and he can see, he is still called the blind man. And I suggest to you, the big idea of John 9 is everyone can see this man is blind. Not a single person can see that they are blind. 3 points from today's passage: 3 types of blindness: blindness to the man, blindness to Jesus, blindness to our blindness. Verse 1. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus' answer is interesting. Verse 3. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. In other words, this man is born blind, so I can heal him. Which sounds wrong. For all this life, this man could not see, even as a baby. And as an adult, he has to beg on the streets as a blind man by the side of the street. Why? So that verse 3, the works of God might be displayed in him. Now, for some of you, that's going to sound cruel and wrong, and I know, but stay with me. We'll come back to this. Verse 6. After saying this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. End of story. Jesus heals the man and everyone praises God for the miracle. No, quite the opposite, actually. Everyone starts questioning the man. Verse 8. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, No, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. They can't believe it's the same guy. And he keeps saying to them, it's really me. It's quite funny. He only looks like him, they say. They can see with their own eyes that he's the same guy. But nope, it can't be him. Why? Think of the most unlikely person here in the Chinese church suddenly becoming a Christian. Maybe they hate coming to Life Fellowship. Maybe they always cause trouble during the sermon. Then one day they actually become a Christian and put their faith in Jesus. And I point to that person and say, no way, I don't believe it. This guy has always been a troublemaker. Now, why would I say that? Because when he was a troublemaker, all I saw was his sin. And when he became a Christian, all I still see is his sin. That's blindness, isn't it? My blindness, not his, is actually my sinfulness and not theirs. Secondly, blindness to Jesus. And here we meet the Pharisees. Verse 13, they brought to the Pharisees the man who had been born blind. Like in school, when you have a problem, you go to the teacher. So here they go to the Pharisees. Teacher, Jesus healed this blind man. So verse 14, now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. This man is so innocent in his answers. What did Jesus do? He put mud on my eyes. Like a kid's answer. The Pharisees, on the other hand, are having a theological debate about doctrine, about rules, about the Sabbath. Verse 16, some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? And so they were divided. It can't be on the Sabbath. It can't be this. It can't be that. In their heads, they're thinking Bible verses, complex theological arguments. This man, he just answers their questions. Almost like an idiot. He doesn't realize he's making them angrier and angrier. Verse 17, they turned again to the blind man. What do you have to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet. That is not an acceptable answer to these PhD scholars. Who do you think Jesus is? I don't know. Or maybe, maybe he has some special power. But this guy, like an idiot, says, Jesus is a prophet, a man of God. Wrong answer. Wrong answer. So verse 18, they call his parents, which is a little ridiculous, but that's what happens like in school. They ring up mom and dad. Verse 19, is this your son? They asked. Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see? Now get this. They ask, is this guy your son? Get this. They would rather believe that someone was acting as their son, or they would rather believe that he was never blind, but he's faking it. What do mom and dad say? Verse 21, ask him yourself. Why? Because they were afraid. Verse 22, they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. And that's sad, because it's their son, but they're afraid for themselves. Then they're afraid for their son. And that's sad. By the way, what do you think of this man? They're asking him a lot of questions. They bring in his parents. They're quite insulting towards him. What do you think is going on through this man's mind at this moment? Is he scared like his parents? Is he angry like the Pharisees? I don't know about you, but to me, he seems amused. Like, what's going on with these guys? I keep answering the same questions again and again and again. What's wrong with them? Verse 27, he answered, I've told you already and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Oh, they really lose their cool. It says they insult him, they call him a sinner, they call him an idiot. How dare you lecture us? They say, why? Because the person they are really angry with is Jesus. Notice they don't call Jesus in to answer their questions. No, they don't dare do that, I think. But they call in this man. They push this man around. They push his parents around. But this man, he just doesn't care. He just tells them, do you want to become Christians too? Do you want to be his disciples too? They are blind to the man, and we saw that earlier. But here the Pharisees, they are blind to Jesus. He is a sinner, they say. He can't be God, they say. We will never follow him, they say. In Cantonese, we would say, Mo ngan tai. We know I see. These guys, they are lost cases. They're looking at a lot of evidence, but with an agenda in their hearts. We know he's fake, they say. We know he's a sinner. Give me enough evidence to condemn him in my heart. And whether today you're a Christian or a non-Christian, I hope, that's not you. Because this is a very foolish way to consider what is true and what isn't true. And I hope that isn't you. Finally, they're blind to their blindness. And this is point 3, verse 35. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out. And when they found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? And he replies, verse 36, who is he, sir? The man asked, tell me, so that I may believe in him. Jesus said, you have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Then the man said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. Again, just a simple faith. Just a simple picture of conversion. I once was blind, but now I see. Christian faith is just like that. It is simple. And, if it's true, then it's true. If it's not true, don't believe it. But if it is true and Jesus is God, then worship him. Why not worship him? We should worship him. Verse 39, Jesus says, for judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. Some of the Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, what? Are we blind too? Jesus said, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. What does Jesus mean here? Now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. The world is divided into 2 categories. Those who are blind, number 1, and those who realize that they are blind. And the whole point of John chapter 9 is not make sure you can see things clearly, it's the opposite. It's realize that all of us are born blind. All of us are like the man, blind since birth. All of us are sinners. And the only difference between us and the Pharisees is, do we realize we are blind? Or are we blind to our sin? Are we blind to our blindness? Do you know that, what I realized this week as I studied this passage for myself? I think I have more in common with the Pharisees than the blind man. I tend to listen to people who tell me what I like to hear. I think I am hot stuff. I even preach here in the Chinese church. 15 years ago, I was in Singapore, and I told my pastor, I want to work for the church. My pastor told me no. And instead, he hired a few other people. And I remember one of them was this old guy in his 40s. And part of me in my foolishness went, what? You're choosing this old guy and not me? Are you serious? Let me tell you, this guy was one of the most humblest, gentlest people I know, and very funny as well. If you asked him a question during Bible study, most of the time he would say, I don't know lah. He's a lot like the guy in today's passage. He was just an honest believer who didn't think too highly of himself, but just kept looking to Jesus. Friends, all of us are born blind, and that's the point of the passage. And the biggest grace that Jesus can give us today is to open our eyes to our blindness, to open our eyes to our sinfulness, and to open our eyes to the forgiveness and offer of eternal life on the cross.